Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this, our sixth ordinary meeting for 2025. I'll commence by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Butchulla people, and pay my respects to our elders past, present, and emerging. Let us pray together. Each of us, according to our individual beliefs, grant to this council wisdom, understanding, and sincerity of purpose for the good governance of the community. Apologies and leave of absence. I'll move that Council approve a leave of absence for Councillor Michelle Govers for 30 June 2025, and to note that Councillor Michelle Govers will not be in attendance at the 30 June 2025 Council Ordinary Meeting. Seconded Councillor Michelle Byrne. Put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. We move to item 4, Merrill Minute. 4.1, Maryborough Baby Clinic external renovations. As you'll see, I've moved that Council lists the external conservation and restoration of the Maryborough Baby Clinic in the mid-year budget review to improve the visual aesthetics of the building until such time as the Council commits to its full restoration. This is a building that's over a century old. It is heritage listed, and it has never before looked like it does now, fenced off, boarded off, with timber over the windows. It is a landmark building at the very entrance to the Maryborough CBD. The least we could do is what is listed here. Find out how much it'll cost to restore the facade so that it is not fenced and boarded off. This building is significant for our community. Heritage comes from a wide range of things, particularly the architectural significance which this building has. The history, it's over a century, but the stories behind it. This building represents a changing of societal attitudes around how we manage the health care for mothers and children. It arose out of the Maternity Act of 1922. It arose out of the situation that anybody can see if they walk through a churchyard or a cemetery full of graves of children. This building was one of 10 built across the state over a century ago to ensure that young mothers were cared for, that mothers of all ages were cared for, and that their children receive the required care. It reflects that history, that change in how we view healthcare, and it is a significant landmark in our community. That's why I've listed it here, as I think we need to be setting a better example in terms of how we care for this building. Are there any speakers or questions? Councillor Truscott?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
For normal budget sort of process, is it normal that we would say that council list for consideration the external conservation and restoration?
Yeah, sorry. I'm happy to change the amount. Council, I think we would use that word normally.
Yes.
I'm happy to put that. I'm happy to change it to the council list for consideration. Yeah.
The external conservation. Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Truscott.
You mentioned before about getting the prices beforehand. Is that possible?
Yeah, we would. Yeah, we would get. I mean, I've got sort of we've got the quotes that we've got in the past, which are for larger works. But I think we would need, I haven't seen where we've actually gone for quotes just to sort of make it presentable. We would, yeah, it would not be hard to get that quote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor. Yeah, we would be looking at coming back to council to talk about what those works might be, and then we'd go out and seek quotes before we get to the budget consideration.
Any further speakers or questions? Yeah, Councillor Chapman.
Mr. Mayor, I'd actually like to speak against this motion.
Yeah.
I was in the council when we looked at buying this building, and I know it's an old building, and it was when we bought it off as a resident, and the purpose we bought it for was to demolish it, and then someone come along and put it as Heritage listed the building. But the thing is that we're looking at the cost it is to with running our community and everything like that, and I just look at what we're actually going to do with this building when it can cost us $1 million, or I'm not sure the exact figure. But what I'm looking at is we need to be looking where we can put our money in better places. So, Mr. Mayor, I know where you're coming from with what you're trying to do to tidy this building up. It does look a disgrace, but I think there's better things we can be spending our money on. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can respond very quickly. If anybody had that intention that we were buying it to demolish it. That's actually not clear in the report. That's not clear if you go back and look at the meeting. And certainly it's not legal because it's a heritage listed building.
It's heritage listed now, but it wasn't when we first bought it. When we first bought it, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, but that is the relevant fact though. You can't go back to when it was purchased and say that you have a right to demolish as a result of that. If you have a demolition approval that precedes a heritage listing, that takes precedence, but there's no demolition approval. So the fact that it's been later heritage listed isn't diminished.
I'm just saying that when we bought it, it didn't have any heritage listing. And then we bought it, and the reason we bought it for was the space to demolish it. And when we were looking at building the library and admin building in that area.
And that's the second time you've mentioned that. I remember the drawings for the building, and this was in it. The actual when it was put forward to build on that site, wasn't this building sort of a component of the architectural drawings?
I can't recollect, but I think Councillor Chapman, you're right. You're both right in a way in terms of the resolution, the decision of council made no decision. There was no decision to demolish. The discussion up to the council meeting was to purchase the site with a view to demolish. And then after it was heritage listed, the focus was then how do we incorporate it into the new library and admin building. The original intent to purchase it was based on two issues. Firstly, they're a strategically important piece of land given its proximity to the proposed new library and admin building, and there was a view to acquire it and demolish it, but it was subsequently heritage listed, which has taken that off the table.
Councillor Trescott?
Yeah, I was originally going to vote against this when I read it, but your speech on that has changed my mind a little bit because I agree with it. It is an eyesore. It is important that Mayoral does look better. And secondly, we haven't decided whether we're going to do it anyway, so I'm happy to support it now.
Any further speakers or questions? Not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? All opposed? That's carried 9-1. The next item is 4.2, suspending the animal inspection program. This might take a bit longer to explain it. So the motion that I'm moving is that council suspend the animal inspection program to allow further consultation with councillors. I put this on the motion after a lot of reflection. I'm aware that we passed the resolution last December to do this inspection. I've gone back and looked at the reports, and given the high bar that we have to meet in terms of doing an inspection program, this is the type of thing that can only be done through a resolution of council. Going back to the report, it doesn't list any risks. I don't think it adequately explains what the process is. I think, this is something that we should reflect upon whether or not this type of program that the police would not be able to do, this type of program which no other level of government has the authority to do, whether or not we should continue be doing this. My attention has been drawn much sharper than when it last came to us for consideration in December, and through sharper consideration and discussion with a few community members, including family members, my view of it has certainly become much clearer about what is involved in this. It is reasonable for people to have an expectation of privacy in their own backyard. It is reasonable for them to feel like they will not have people intruding on their own property without good reason, just randomly and arbitrarily. It is reasonable for them to expect to feel safe from what they may view as an intruder. We as a council need to demonstrate values of respect and adherence to sound principles of good governance. The bar that needs to be reached on this is high. Council cannot do it without a resolution. There is an obligation of oversight, which is what I'm seeking to address today. If people do not want to consider it, then they can easily just vote against my resolution and we'll move on. When you look at the report, it does not state how we will deal with the obligations under Section 111 and Section 113 of the Animal Cats and Dogs Management Act. So, and when you look at this, the actual program gives temporary council officers much greater powers than a police officer in the same circumstances would have, and powers powers to make findings against people and to inspect without a reasonable suspicion by the council. So I'll seek to start with just a few questions to the director. What does an inspection look like? And do they go to the front door? What are they inspecting when they arrive? The house, the dog, or the person? And when does it start? And at what point do they communicate the rights and obligations?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. The program commences in March and runs through till the end of August. The officers undertake training at the beginning of the program. They enter the property. They do not enter the physical residence. They go into the property and they knock on the door and await for a resident to answer the door. They introduce themselves and advise why they are on the property. If there is no one at home, they leave a calling card. They may survey the area outside the physical residence to ascertain whether there is an animal on premise and do those due diligence checks. At no time do they enter the physical residence or physical structure of that property.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned residence a few times there, because it is referred to in section 113. When do we consider the place of residence starts?
At the front door. However, I will...
But we would go to the front door.
Sorry?
But we would go to the front door.
We do go to the front door. That's correct. Or side door, or wherever there is an opportunity to knock and introduce ourselves to the person within the property, whether they're the homeowner or tenant.
And so in response to my question 9, it was stated that there are 4,512 properties that have been inspected across various suburbs, and a great bulk of the suburbs are listed here. But then when you add up the tables referred to, it comes out to 7,363. Which one of those numbers is correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That has just been brought to my attention. I will just consult with my colleague, if that's okay. You've got an answer on that? Okay. Apologies, we don't have an answer on the discrepancy between those numbers at the moment. If I could take that on notice and respond to you.
Okay, I'll just note that the response refers to 4,512, and then it lists the table. I've added it up, and it comes to 7,365. The CEO's added up, and it comes to 7,363. So maybe we missed Pacific Haven and 2.
My eyesight might be.
Yeah. I know, I'm happy to take your number, 7,363. In terms of question 8, it says that it's a systemic inspection, and it has to be systemic or selective, and that it goes property to property, excluding the ones already recorded with the current paid registration. Would the officer skip a property for any other reason?
Not to my knowledge, excuse me, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. Not to my knowledge, unless the property itself is deemed, too dangerous to enter, the dog could potentially be distressed or violent if that's happening, so they would then not enter the property if their own harm was in jeopardy.
So they take a risk of entry, yeah. And do they record that? Which properties they missed? Presumably if they missed one that had a dog, which they would have gone to otherwise, if some action is taken.
Yes, I understand that is correct, that they would record the properties that they have not entered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And despite the report from last December under the section for risk implications saying no risks have been identified from previous programs, it seems to me that there would be some risks in this program for worker safety, for reputation, whether the resident, has, anxiety or PTSD or some other reason why they would be particularly fearful of what they see as an intruder. There seems to be a risk to our employees and a legal liability to us as an organisation. Do you have any concerns about worker safety?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. I think as part of our program, our officers undertake the appropriate training. They also understand when to consider or when to consider risks. If they feel at all threatened, they'd retreat from the property, report their concerns, and then if there are any altercations, they would contact the appropriate authorities. If a resident of the property seems to be stressed or suffering, some sort of episode, they would again retreat from the property and make note of that.
And what would happen with that note where they've caused distress to a resident?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wasn't articulating that they had caused stress to a resident. I think if they identify or observe that the resident seems very stressed and it's not an appropriate time to be there, they would retreat from the property.
And so what kind of note, what would happen as a result of that if our agents went to a property and they noticed that someone was distressed by their presence?
I might hand over to my colleague on the process, Mr Gatt. That's okay.
Hi, thank you. So, Mr Mayor, just in relation to that specific point, officers do note that a property has been visited, that there was a dog on site, for example, but they've requested to leave or they've left on behalf of the property owner. Once they leave the property, that is noted in the auditor account, in which they're actually detailing the details of the inspection. So that would then be recorded as an animal on the property. If it was unregistered, it would then trigger a re-inspection to look at registering that animal.
And we only go to properties where there is no registered dog, though?
The properties that they visit may have a historically registered animal at that site, so it's also identifying whether or not an animal is located on the property anymore. We often go to properties where people have moved out from. There are no dogs still recorded on the site, however our systems indicate that there is, so it's also part of a data cleansing process.
And is this the type of job we would normally send 2 officers to?
Yes, it is the type of job. We have 2 officers working in a street together.
Yeah, thank you. So information provided to question 7 of my request for further info states that there have been 8 penalty infringement notices issued directly from the door knocking for maintaining an unregistered dog identified as part of the inspection program. And then the answer to question 2 states that there have been 148 registrations undertaken by the AIP field officers. Can you explain the distinction between the 8 pins and the 100, presumably the 148 includes those 8? So what's the distinction between the 8 examples where we issued a pin and the other 140 where the officer in the field registered an unregistered dog?
So the officers in the field have to carry a burden of proof in relation to any escalation in our enforcement actions. So if a property is visited, there's an unregistered animal, they may have been newly moved into the region, not been aware of the requirements, nor can we demonstrate and prove that the requirements under the statutes have been met. However, if 8 individuals definitely have been living within the region for a specified period of time, and we can carry that burden of proof, then we will take the appropriate enforcement action.
And so that's the 8?
Correct.
Yeah. And so the other 140, they were, say, new residents, or it's a puppy?
Yes, correct. It's not at an age where it is required to be registered, or they have not been residing within the region. That is the
new residents, yeah.
Absolutely, and that is based on the information we receive in conversation.
Yeah. And so with the 8 pins, can you give some examples of those about what it was?
It was for failing to register an animal.
Yeah, and the circumstances?
The circumstances would be that the animal resided within the Fraser Coast region longer than the statutory period of time. So it's been within the region and the officers can demonstrate that, and they have issued the infringement.
Okay, thank you. So the resolution from the 11th of December 2024 states that the inspection program is for all localities within the region, but states it starts with areas that have the lowest registration rates or those with the highest number of animal-related complaints. And so it's a systemic program rather than a selective one. The resolution states it's systemic. And whilst the resolution provides where it will start, it states that the inspection program is all locations. I look at the table and it includes a wide range of suburbs. I mean, there's only a few that I can see that are missing, say Tyro or Glenwood. I'm surprised they're not on it. Whereas we've obviously done a lot in Urangan, a lot in Bermheads. Can you talk a bit about this election? Like, say, for example, why is Urangan, why we would have over 1,400 in Urangan and 9 in Glenwood?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The systematic program is recorded as a systematic program for that reason, so that we aren't tailoring it to a specific area or specific location. We have a large number of requests coming in from the Urangan area. Previously, in previous years, Point Vernon had a high number of animal requests, for example, and a low number per capita of animal registrations. So if we look at the suburb, we look at the number of residents within that suburb, and then we look at the number of animal registrations, for example, that will give us an indication that it's not representative. Animal registrations are not representative of the broader community. So that's why we visit specific suburbs. We will visit specific suburbs at a higher rate than some of the other localities.
So when the resolution talks about commencing in specific localities, we don't finish that locality before moving on to the next?
No, because it's systematic, Mr Mayor, we're unable to travel across the entire region.
So, Section 11 of the Act, Animal Act, provides a general power to enter places, and then Section 111.3, which you'd be aware of, states that for the purposes of an approved inspection program, it does not include a part of the place where a resident resides. Do we have the power to walk up to the front door under that?
Yes, we do.
Would you consider someone's backyard, entering someone's backyard uninvited, entering their residence?
No, not entering the residence, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Section 25A of the Human Rights Act states, 25A, a person has the right not to have the person's privacy, family home, or correspondence unlawfully or arbitrarily interfered with. And the definition of arbitrary that I found in the dictionary is based on or derived from uninformed opinion or random choice. Is a systemic program when through the people that have been that have been inspected on this table, and I understand this is not, well, this is the full table because it's the higher number. Is that random?
So again, it's subject to the data that we have on our systems and in the way that we actually target and undertake the program. The legislation or the legislative provisions that we meet and we follow clearly follow and are subject to the Queensland human rights legislation, and the state government who puts this policy and this legislation in place, undertakes a full compliance with those other supportive legislative provisions.
So,
Mr Mayor, if I can just add to that too, the definition that you read out talked about unlawful. This is a lawful.
yes,
lawful
and I did stress arbitrary, unlawful or arbitrary. That's what I'm talking about, arbitrary.
It's lawful.
Yeah.
That's the point I was making.
Okay, can I reiterate my point? The legislation says unlawful or arbitrary.
Your question?
Well, no, I said it, you've queried it as if you didn't understand it. Unlawful or arbitrary.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. What training do our officers receive on the Human Rights Act, particularly in relation to the right to privacy under Section 25?
So thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. Our officers undertake training annually in relation to and with due regard to provisions around the right to enter, so the powers of entry that we have. Our powers to enter a property are always subject to common law initially. Then we have additional provisions in relation to evidence gathering under the Local Government Act or other legislative provisions that supports the officer's actions going into a property or a premise. The training that they undertake is provided annually by our solicitors firm, and our solicitors firm take them stringently through what the requirements are to meet and to also extract evidence from a property for use should escalation of enforcement actions be undertaken.
I'll wrap up here. Basically, I think this is an opportunity for us to consider whether we want to continue with this. This is a power that we've given temporary officers that far exceeds what police officers have. This is something that which from my view and the view of the Human Rights Act, people have a right to privacy that's not going to be invaded arbitrarily. And as we've heard, this is a systemic program where people are inspected randomly, that is not based on a complaint about their property. If we did an inspection program, as envisaged more so under this act that's based upon dangerous or menacing dogs, then there would be a reason why people's human right to privacy was being infringed upon. But to merely check if dogs are registered does not meet the standard provided as an example, as in terms of dangerous and menacing dogs in section 113 of the Act concerning community safety. People have a right to privacy on their property, and this extends to their backyards. People have a right to know that if somebody's coming to their door, it's for a good reason. I wish that when people first came into contact with the council, it was us asking, how can we help? How can we make a community, how can we build better communities together? Not finding out if they've done something wrong. This inspection program is overreach and we can do better. Knocking on doors of people who have never had a dog is not an inspection program envisaged by the Act, which clearly frames such inspection programs in terms of dangerous and menacing dogs through the example provided in the Act. I urge councillors to think about what local government should be doing to serve the community. Would these resources not be better spent responding to dog complaints, of which we get so many? If someone is contacted randomly by the council, it would be much better if it was in a positive light, if we were seeking to help, if we were working with them, not looking for what they've done wrong. And this resolution would allow us to pause the program and ensure that it aligns with our values of service and respect. Are there any speakers? Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be supporting the motion put by yourself, probably for different reasons, but let me just be clear that I have no issue with further consultation and discussions around this, and I note that you mentioned the word pause. I'm very open for us to have a pause and continue the conversation.
I should note that in this circumstance, the pause means close it out for the season, because it is a 6-month program that runs from March to August. So the effect of pausing it would be that we pause it as it is, and we can reallocate those resources to where might better align with our, if we have shared values, about what those resources could be doing.
So can I ask a question then?
Yep.
Is there a legislative requirement that that there cannot be a pause? I mean, surely there are reasons for pauses during a 6-month program.
I can respond to that. There's no legislative requirement to say that you can't do a pause.
So yeah, I'll just reiterate, I'm entirely comfortable with us having further consultation on the matter, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Councillor Farage?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a question regarding the staff that undertake this program. Is there other adequate work that they can be doing whilst council is consulting on this program and we put a pause to it?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through the Chair. They are currently temporary staff, or what we classify as tempo staff, so they can be reallocated to other roles within council for the duration of that period.
Councillor Byrne?
Got a couple of questions. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that this ends in August anyway, is that correct? So why would we not let this program run till the end of August and then reassess it at the end of August?
I don't think that's a question that you should put to a staff member.
I can take that question.
To council.
Again, I know I'm aware that I voted for this last December, and I look back at the report and it doesn't even mention risks. If I went back and looked at the meeting, it was probably passed without any discussion. Through members of the community and discussions, my attention to this has been sharpened and focused. And, we have a Human Rights Act in Queensland. One of the human rights to be respected is privacy. I believe privacy extends to people's backyards. And I also think that we should not be taking on powers greater than, have been deemed appropriate for police officers. There are very good reasons why we, would be out in the community for education and seeking to ensure that regulations and laws are in place. But I think this inspection program where we are going around to look for people who have unregistered dogs is overreach in terms of what a modern day government can do that respects privacy and liberties.
It's also my understanding that police officers do have the right to knock on your front door.
But with good cause. The police officer can't go up and down the street knocking on doors randomly looking for it to, they would have to have good cause to enter the property. Yeah.
So is this any different to the census people, a religious
Absolutely.
hawker, a raffle ticket seller?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is the point. We are a local government. People are getting fined. We are looking, and we are putting our officers in a potentially dangerous situation.
It's my understanding that the officers go to the front, our officers go to the front door, knock on the door. They don't go into the backyard. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So they're going to the door, knocking on the door. If there's an issue, then they leave. If there's a dog there, they check, and then they go. So I'm a little confused as to, because you often, in your statement, are referring to the fact that we're going into people's backyards. I don't see that as what's happening here. I'm seeing that we're going to the front door, systematic approach, and then moving on.
I think it's unavoidable that we're not breaching privacy, and you talk about people's front door, the Act specifically says it doesn't include a place of residence. So by looking through the front door, they are in fact, you know, I'm not going to talk about whether it's a breach of the Act, but the Act specifically says an inspection program does not include the part of the place which is the person's residence.
So in our request for further information previously, I noted there's at least a dozen other regional councils in Queensland that do the same thing. So you're saying that every single one of those councils is in breach of that?
Potentially, I don't know the details of that. My view is that a systemic inspection program which simply targets every single residence. I see that we may be targeting residents that have a registered dog, but I had earlier that we weren't. One of the responses said that we were going to every single residence that did not have a registered dog. A systemic approach like that does breach the Section 25 of the Human Rights Act.
You keep
Because it's
quoting,
arbitrary.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, you keep quoting
You
the
asked me.
law.
Yeah.
So you're telling me second-handly, or in your opinion, that every other one of those regional councils is breaching that law?
No.
Is that correct?
No. Because I don't know.
Well, I'm confused because you just told me
I
that
didn't say
we're
that.
breaching the law.
Yeah. I mentioned the systemic. The systemic nature of it makes it arbitrary. I don't know what, if you could have, there certainly is a case for animal inspection programs under the Act, and the example given relates to dangerous and menacing dogs. So you could have an animal inspection program that goes around to places where is a concern about dangerous and menacing dogs, where there is a dangerous and menacing dog, to make sure they are complying with Schedule 1 of the Act. That would not be arbitrary. The arbitrary nature of this, not whether it's lawful or unlawful, because it is, but the arbitrary nature of it is what I think breaches the Human Rights Act. Well, tell me it's not arbitrary, if it's every single person.
Well, the next question I would be asking.
Well, you could tell me if it's not, do you think that's...
I don't consider it arbitrary. I consider it business as usual to ensure compliance, and to just note that unfortunately we've had a fatal dog attack where a woman died. And I don't want to cheapen that, but I just feel that we are, excuse me, as an organisation, capturing the animals that need to be registered. We've also proven that we have an ability now to return animals to people quicker because they've let their registrations lapse, or they're not living in that same address. So I see a lot of positive. While I respect your concern, I do. I'm not saying it's a flippant suggestion. I just would like to see us, just based on the data that's allowing us for our animals to be returned, for dangerous dogs to be monitored, for people to have the opportunity to update their data, whether perhaps they've forgotten to, they're new to town, whatever. I see a lot of positives for it. My concern is that we would cut it short before necessary. I would be happy to see it go to the end of August and then discuss it.
Yep, and I agree with you that registration is important, and we want all dogs to be registered. But there are, outcomes, sometimes the benefit doesn't outweigh the means, so to speak. There are certain limitations that should be placed on all levels of government, and that's what the Human Rights Act is about, is that the benefit doesn't always outweigh the means. Sometimes there are limitations that should be placed on government, and one of them, according to the Human Rights Act, is that people's privacy should not be arbitrarily interfered with. And you can argue with two sides of that. You can say their privacy is not being invaded, and you sort of made that point, and you're also saying it's not arbitrarily. So that's the distinction. I think their privacy is being invaded, and it is arbitrary. So that's where I think we differ. Yeah, Councillor Cosgrove?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I had a question Off the back of Councillor Farage's question about the temporary staff, I note on page 4 of the request for further information document, you've got the table there with costs. In the business case column, $95,000 and change. Do we envisage that we could actually save some or all of that portion, considering there may be costs on the other side? But do we expect that we could save somewhere in the order of that expenditure if we suspend the program this year?
Thank you, councillor. Through the chair, so that 95,000 is the business case that was approved for a permanent team member for 25-26. If this program is suspended or paused, that role will no longer be required. So.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to the motion, please, Mr. Chair. I'll be speaking in favour of the motion, and I thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I think it is something that you're doing in a responsive manner, which is what we're supposed to, do here, is essentially have things brought to us and consider things maybe from an angle that the 11 of us didn't at the time that we put this through unanimously last year. The Mayor's comments have gone to, not to trivialise it, but perhaps the minutiae of the lawfulness of this activity. But in my mind, what's more important is the usefulness of the activity. And I believe that reading the documentation and the RWFI document, there is not a cost-benefit ratio that I can support. I think that we would be better off pausing this, consulting further, and then deciding if it is something we want to do in the future, noting that we should and can continue to have a specific inspection program related to dangerous and menacing dogs and regulated dogs that can be probably more responsive than just an arbitrary blanket knocking on the door of not every property, but a whole bunch of properties. So I see this as an opportunity to save money where potentially we aren't getting the benefit that we should be for the expenditure in the financial climate that we're in. We should be looking to save money wherever we can, and for that reason, I'll be supporting the motion.
Any further speakers or questions? Councillor Truscott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respectfully, I was speaking against this motion. So as we've heard, the program has been in operation for at least 3 years now. The numbers aren't dropping, which means some people are continuing to do the wrong thing. Yes, police officers need appropriate authority to enter a property, as council does here also, and the State Act gives that authority to council to do that. The police are trained, council officers are trained. There is an implied licence, and the common law in Australia recognises that members of the public, anyone, can have an implied permission to walk to a house's front door unless the occupant has expressly withdrawn that permission with a sign like no trespassing. And as we've heard, officers approach the front door. And yes, sometimes you can see the backyard from the front too. I don't imagine any of the officers are jumping side gates or anything to go and have a look in the backyard. Not that that's been implied, but I don't think anyone's doing that. As councillors, we approach people's front doors when we go door knocking and campaigning. It's reasonable for people to have an expectation of privacy, but I don't see our officers taking any actions in an inappropriate manner that would invade someone's privacy. In fact, the only inappropriate manners that we've seen is from footage of our officers being treated inappropriately by residents who were doing the wrong thing to begin with. And it's reasonable that there is an expectation people should do the right thing and register their dogs in the first place, then we wouldn't have a need for a program like this. So as it's been said, yes, we did all vote unanimously for this program. And as far as I'm aware, there's only been one complaint. And there's plenty of other Queensland councils, as we've heard, doing this program as well. It's been confirmed as appropriate by the legal advice that council has sought, and it's my belief that we should wait for the minister's response to the complaint that's outstanding and then make a decision. And let's remember that this comes down to some people continuing to choose to do the wrong thing.
Any further speakers or questions? Yeah, Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak the negative to this motion. And Mr Mayor, I appreciate your view is. But I feel that people that are doing the right thing to achieve compliance would have not any problem and would appreciate council checking on animals across this region. Registration of animals is a much needed policy as it assists for the return of lost animals and their well-being. I would like to express my support for maintaining the existing animal inspection program. This policy is not just a regulatory measure, it is a critical tool in uncovering unregistered animals in our region. Without it, we risk turning a blind eye to the very issue that threatens the safety and well-being of our community. This program shines a light on properties where animal ownership may not be appropriate, declared and regulated. In dogs, so it has revealed gaps in registration, gaps that pose a direct risk, particularly when it comes to dangerous and menacing dogs. I understand the need to balance community concerns, and that's why I support the council's existing program. So it focuses especially on public safety. By concentrating inspections only on properties with reported incidents and where regular dogs are housed, we cannot ensure compliance of the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act while using our resources responsibly. Suspending the existing framework would ignore the council's compliance policy and unregistered animals. Let's not weaken the protection that our residents rely on. Let's keep the existing policy in place and let's enhance it to better serve the safeguard of our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors.
Any further speakers or questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? 5. All opposed? 5 with a casting vote. That's carried 6-5. No, with a casting vote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The next item, sorry, just grab it. Next item is 5.1, the ordinary meeting for May, pages 7 to 24. Is there a mover that the minutes of the ordinary meeting 5/24?
I just have a question to the CEO. I wasn't in attendance because I was at a disaster management conference. Do I still enjoy?
You can still move it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Is there a mover for this? Councillor Farage, is there a seconder? Councillor Byrne? Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 5.2, the special meeting, pages 25 to 55. Is there a mover that the minutes of the special meeting be approved? Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 6.1, the open resolutions register, pages 56 to 65. Are there any questions on this one? Is there a mover? Councillor Farage, second Councillor Byrne. I'll put the motion then. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Community presentations, Mr. CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were 2 people that spoke today at community presentations. The first speaker was Mr. Angelo Oliero, who spoke concerning excess water overflow from the development at Colleton Street, Torquay, and he sought an independent review of the development approvals and on-site works to ensure that it is compliant. The second speaker was Mr. Graham Wode, who spoke in relation to flooding and the response from Brisbane City Council in relation to flooding associated with Cyclone Alfred. That's my verbal report, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Do we normally have a motion to note that? Yeah. Oh yeah, the council note the verb. Is there a mover that council note? Councillor Cosgrove, second Councillor Whelan. All in favour? All opposed? That's carried unanimously 9-0. Deputations, there's no deputations. 9.1, receipt of petitions. Councillor Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 petitions. The first one is from Chief Petitioner Kenneth Fraser, requesting an upgrade to Tavistock and Colleton intersection with 72 signatures.
We'll deal with them one at a time.
Yep, and I move that the petition be received.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor O'Keefe, all in favour? You opposed? That's carried unanimously.
And the second petition, Mr. Mayor, is from Chief Petitioner Di Fender, requesting an upgrade of traffic restrictions between the Water Park roundabout and Beach Road Esplanade roundabout with 26 signatures. And I request that the petition be received and referred to a committee or officer for consideration and report to council.
Water Park roundabout being Main Street roundabout.
Assuming so.
Yep, see, petition be received as seconded Councillor O'Keefe. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Any further petitions? Councillor Wheeland?
Yeah, I have a petition received from Chief Petitioner Angelo Oliaro regarding Huntington Street residents in an adjacent development, and I'm asking that the petition be received and referred to committee or an officer for consideration and report to council.
Yeah, seconded Councillor Farage. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 10, any further petitions? Item 10.1, Environment and Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Moved Councillor O'Keefe. Is there a second? Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.2, the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting minutes, 72 to 79. Moved Councillor Chapman. Seconded Councillor Cosgrove. Do you wish to speak to these?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, just a quick one there. It's 3.7. It talks about the integrated transport strategy. I'd just like to thank the community when it went out for consultation. There were 600 online forms, 540 Facebooks, and 100 paper copies towards the survey. And some of the things that actually come back was to try and bring in the 50-cent bus services in the area. Rail between Maryborough and Harvey Bay was something that the people asked for, and they're also asking for an alternative route within from Harvey Bay to the highway. So, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to thank everyone for participating in that and the officers for their work that they're doing on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.4, the Water and Waste Services Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Is that mover for this? Councillor Phil Truscott, second Councillor Byrne. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. 10.5, the Audit and Risk Committee, pages 102 to 109. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Byrne, second Councillor Wheeland. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. I'm sorry, we missed, thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll go to 10.3, informal meeting, record of matters discussed, pages 8 to 96. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Cosgrove?
Yep.
Second Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.6, the Mary to Bay Rail Trail meeting minutes, 110 to 115. Moved Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Paul Truscott. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.7, the Arts, Culture and Heritage meeting minutes, pages 116. Moved Councillor Farage, seconded Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.1.1, the councillor meeting attendance for July, pages 119 to 120. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Farage, is there a seconder? Councillor Byrne, any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Sorry, can everybody raise their hand on this one? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all opposed? That's carried 10 to 3. Oh, sorry, 7 to 3, sorry. Thank you. Item 11.2.1, the Audit and Risk Committee membership, 121 to 124. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Byrne, second Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.2, request for community leases at the Maryborough Showgrounds, 125 to 130. This is moved Councillor Chapman, seconded Councillor Paul Truscott. Do you wish to speak to this?
Just a question, Mr
Yep.
Mayor, to the Director. With this, these new leases for the Maryborough Showgrounds, it's business as usual. It's just a way of having, so these groups can actually go out and get funding now, is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor, through the Chair, Mr Mayor. Yes, this is a process, basically. It also provides them with more guarantee over tenure by providing them a lease rather than a permit to occupy.
Thank you.
Yeah, take your lead.
Yeah. Any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. We now enter on to all the policies, which technically we can move as a block, won't we?
So if there, Mr Mayor, if there are no objections to the recommendations, the council can move all of those motions en bloc. If there are objections or councillors particularly want to speak to a particular one, you could move all of the recommendations except that agenda item en bloc and come back and do that agenda item.
I think we'll just move through it. Yeah, I'll just take it as I'll move all these and I'll seek seconders.
So which ones, Mr Mayor?
No, we'll move through them individually.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, new policy, business continuity policy 131, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. The Entertainment Hospitality Council policy, pages 136 to 149, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Seconded Councillor Cosgrove. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.5, the amended policy, competitive neutrality complaints council policy, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed?
Yeah, I've got a cramp.
What did he vote?
He's got a cramp.
He voted yes? You voted yes, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's passed unanimously and Councillor Chapman has left the room. He looks like he's all right though?
Staff go out and massage you.
Okay. Okay. You all right?
I was dancing yesterday, bending over and
Dancing, yeah.
I got a cramp, but just come back at me now.
Yeah, take it easy, yeah. Okay, amended policy, non-current assets, council policy, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? With the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.7, the amended policy, refurbishment concession policy, moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.8, the debt recovery council policy, 187 to 198, moved by myself, seconded Councillor Phil Truscott. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.9, a financial hardship policy on pages 199 to 208, moved by myself, seconded Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.10, the water charge relief council policy, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.11, the pensioner concession council policy, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Paul Truscott. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.12, the community groups concession policy, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Paul Truscott. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.2.13, principal place of residence council policy, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Byrne. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.12.14, councillor discretionary funds policy and expenses reimbursement and provision of facilities for mayor and councillors. Is this second Councillor Cosgrove?
I'm moving an amendment.
Okay, oh yeah?
Which
All
is
right,
listed.
so you're moving them, yep, where are you moving?
So the amendment listed there on
Oh, sorry, yep.
page 11 of the run sheet, which I'm happy to speak to.
Is there a seconder for this? Councillor Farage? Yep. Councillor Cosgrove?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to briefly say that the primary motivation to this amendment is no increase in budget, but to allow councillors more flexibility in how the policy, I guess, operates, and to also allow specifically for a course that I would say is the preeminent course in functioning as a board member, which is essentially what a councillor's role is, which I know you've done before, Mr. Mayor, which was, I believe, at the time you did it, fully funded by council. It is in excess of the full allocation for a year, but this would allow the combination of 2 years or 1.5 years of PD to be able to complete that course without actually increasing the overall budget that a councillor could expend over, their term essentially. So that's the motivation. I know the CEO will need to record why we are deviating from the officer's recommendation, and that's the reason for that.
Any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.3.1, the new policy, Art and Heritage Collections Council Policy, pages 277. This is moved Phil Truscott, seconded Councillor Farage. This is a new policy. I think it is very appropriate that we have a policy in terms of collections, accessioning and deaccessioning, making sure that we are not just the recipient of mountain loads full of artifacts which we have no ability to properly display or care for. This puts a process in place to make sure we are collecting items of relevance and significance. It's a very important step. Yeah. Any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.3.2, the Community Grants Policy 286 to 301. Consider move for this. Councillor Chapman, seconded Councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? Sorry, I just want to check something. Ready to proceed? Just looking at that one. Yeah. So that says we agree. Yep. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.4.1, the amended policy vehicle crossover, 302 to 321. Move Councillor Chapman, second Councillor Wheeland. Any speakers or questions?
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to support this policy because I was looking at the concerns of the number of footpaths that people are putting in and putting driveways on and not lining the footpath up with the edge of the driveway. And it's a trip hazard for our residents when they're walking along at night time and even frail people. So I think a policy like this is trying to bring it into compliance. This has always been as a must to let the community know that there's always been a policy out there for driveways, but people are not going ahead and getting the certification for them. So I just, it's something we need to look at, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Yep. Any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. We're almost there through the policies. Conservation Area Rates Concession Policy 322 to 329. Moved by myself, second Councillor O'Keefe. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.4.3, the Disaster Management and Resilience Levy. Moved by myself. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wheeland. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously and completes the policies. 11.5.1, the Fraser Coast Waste Strategy Interim Review, pages 340 to 368. Is there a mover for this that we endorse? Councillor O'Keefe, second Councillor Byrne. Any questions for Mark? No? Yep. I'll put the motion. Any speakers? Oh, sorry, you've got a question. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Sorry.
Sorry to break the stride here. Just wanted to thank the staff for their hard work in constructing this strategy. Thank you very much. That's it.
Can I just add to the director? There's recently been announced, large in some ways, but perhaps not large relative to what the applications will be, a pool of money for recycling programs by the state government. Do we have anything, whether it's the glass recycling or other circular economy stuff, that we intend to submit to that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr Mayor. So I think the Recycling Funds program has been announced recently. Certainly there'll be opportunities through our Regional Waste Management Plan where we've already undertaken a body of work with other Wide Bay Burnett councils to identify some of the opportunities when it comes to waste diversion. At this stage, I understand that officers are still waiting for the final guidance guidelines to get a better picture of what we can apply for and just the eligibility requirements. But certainly on our radar to be able to put in an application for that.
And thanks, yeah, Mark, while you're speaking, I just want to note that this is your last meeting, as I understand it. This document has everything that comes from your director, reflects on your professionalism, your skill. We are very sad to see you go. Bay Power is very sad to see you go. But no, you've been a real asset to our community, to the council, for decades. Well, it would be. How long have you worked at the council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. December 2006, I started as councilman years ago.
So you're getting close to 20 years, yeah. Yeah, no, I really want to, your professionalism, your knowledge, I've never once thought there wasn't a question I couldn't ask you in terms of your expertise and your knowledge and above that, your professional attitude. I can't think of anyone else in my career, who is more professional and who's more knowledgeable. And my view is that, that would extend beyond water and waste, that whatever field you were in, you would demonstrate and achieve all that. So, yeah, thank you. You are a real loss. We will miss you here.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Chapman?
Mr. Mayor, I'd actually like to add to those words that you just said there towards our director who's leaving. Mark, I just think that every time I've really looked at it, every time that I've asked you a question or someone's asked you a question, you've answered it straight away. And I think, mate, I wish you all the best with your new role, what you're going to be achieving. And you're going to leave some big shoes to try and fill. But I'd just like to thank you. And on a personal matter, you and your family, I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Mr.
Any further speakers or questions on this item? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 11.5.2, the amended policy, the waste management fee concession, pages 369 to 385. This is moved Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Byrne. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 12.1, this is an item I put on the general as a motion, which do notice, for Moira Hansen, who received the Medal of the Order of Australia. Seconded Councillor Sanderson. Yep.
Sorry,
Sorry,
speak to first. I was going to second it, but yeah.
I'm happy for you to move it and for Councillor Sanderson to second it.
I'm happy to do it. My only question would be, and I am completely in favour of it, my only question is, does it need to specify in how we would congratulate it? Is it by doing this motion, or is it by, do we need to write to her? Because it just says the Fraser Coast Council congratulates her on.
As a result of this, I would write to her. That's all right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fully supportive.
Yeah, so this move, Councillor Paul Truscott, second Councillor Sanderson. Do you wish to speak to this?
In fact, I'd probably refer to yourself, Mr. Mayor, on this in more of the history and knowledge about Moira Hansen and her connection to the area and her playing of that magical device. I can't even remember.
Calliope, it's some sort of.
And it's pretty amazing and to see her do that and to thank her for her contribution to community music in that way. And it's great that she's been acknowledged in the King's birthday list in this way. But happy to defer to yourself, Mr. Mayor, for
Thank you.
Good words to Moira.
Yeah, Moira, I think, demonstrates, living a life dedicated service to her family and the community. For, the community of Maryborough, she's been recognised for services to community music, but anybody who knows her knows that she's contributed in so much more than just music. But through the Maryborough Players, through playing at the Calliope and so much more, she's contributed to the cultural life of Maryborough and, a real demonstration of her values. And of course, Brendan's is their children. All of their children contribute in different ways. Mary, unfortunately, passed away at a very young age. She played in Stereo Lab, an international band. But Moira, I've sat with her at their old home in Granville and talked about history. She lives and breathes Maryborough. She is somebody who we can all look to as somebody who inspires and demonstrates a life well lived, a life of contribution, a life of service. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll just add to your comments. I think you're spot on. I concur with everything you've said. I too have sat with Moira in her home, and I think you probably couldn't meet a nicer lady. She has just always spoken highly of course, our region, Maryborough in particular. Brendan Hansen, of course, her husband has been building, named after him, of course, the park in Granville. She is so deserving of this, so for us to write to her, I think is a great gesture, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Any further speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. There's no questions on notice. General business. Is there any general business? No? We'll move to late items. Item 16.1.1, the organisational performance report, pages 406 to 421. Is there a mover for this? Councillor Chapman, seconded Councillor Phil Truscott. Can I ask, going to first page 411, on the cash balance, can you, maybe a question for the CEO, can you give a little bit more, just trying to read my notes, the difference, the variance between the budget year and the 9.2 over budget. Can you give a bit more elaboration on that? It's just the actual capital spend under budget of 38.7. Can you elaborate on that? Is a lot of that I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to take that on notice, but so the makeup of that is that $38.7 million of capital underspend. I know that, for example, the new library admin building, that's around $11 million underspent on a year to date, and it's a range of other projects. What we typically see in the last few months of the year is an acceleration of that, so I expect that will reduce.
Yeah. Yep. So that's not a concern for you then, the substantial difference?
It is a concern when we're not spending the budget that we've got.
It could potentially be good. It could be potentially things being done cheaper, or we're not getting the progress.
I doubt that's it, Mr. Mayor. It's capital projects haven't been delivered. We are working in a really tight market at the moment, trying to get competitive bids for our projects. Several of our tenders that we've called for, we've had to go back out to the market again because we're not comfortable that they were competitive enough. And in some cases, we've had to have repeated tendering to try and ensure we get competitive pricing.
And I guess, can we go to page 414 then? Because I think that outlines it.
Yes.
So we see that in the same chart, just in a different way.
Yes, that's right, Mr. Mayor. And you'll see in the last year's actual a significant ramp up in that last couple of months, and I expect that we'll see that as well.
Like that, to bring us up to the budget.
Closer to. I don't think we're going to hit the budget amount, but I could be wrong.
Yep. Okay. Then can I also on page 414, the safety. We talk about the KPI being under review. Why is that? What's the purpose of the review, and what could be a possible outcome?
Just bear with me, Mr. Mayor.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're reviewing a range of our KPIs to make sure that they accurately reflect the data set that we use. That we're not comfortable that data set is accurate, or that we are recapturing the data accurately. So we've in the last 6 months, in the last 12 months, we appointed a new manager of our safety and wellbeing section. We're doing a comprehensive review to look in an effort to improve our safety record.
So it's not so much the KPI that's under review. The KPI will still be lost time injuries.
Yeah, KPI, lost time injuries will always be a KPI.
But it's how that's collected and
yes,
in a sense.
And how we capture the data.
Okay, thank you. And then on the following page, local spend. We continue to be well off the target. Do you have any thoughts on what could be changed to get us closer to the target?
So with regards to local spend, it's probably reflective of some of the works that we're doing. So the majority of our transactions, our purchasing transactions, are spent locally. It's typically the bigger dollars.
Yeah. And that's why we have the number excluding major projects.
Yeah. The electricity is not considered to be a local spend. Okay, yeah. The only way that we could improve that would be for there to be more competitors in the local market. There's already a local preference, I think, of at least 10%. I'm looking for the nod from the director. Yeah, local preference from 10%. The ways that you could improve your local spend would be to make a decision to extend that, but then the challenges with that is that you would be propping up probably a non-competitive market and costing the community significantly more.
So can I ask, with year-to-date excluding major projects, is electricity covered by major projects? It's not, wouldn't.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems to me that if we're going to review any KPI, it could be a local spend which excludes things like electricity, where of course there is no local company.
Yes, we could review what we actually capture, but as I said before, the majority of our transactions are spent locally. Majority of our individual purchases are spent locally. It's mostly the larger, for example, if we're engaging consultants and contractors, whether they don't have the expertise to undertake those works, we're forced to purchase outside of our local area, and typically that spend is done in South East Queensland.
Yeah. In terms of a KPI, saying we have a target of 75%, is that it? Would you set a target which I presume is unrealistic?
It is unrealistic.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of getting to, is if electricity forms such a large part of our spend and it can never be local, just saying that we're going to have a target of 75%, just muddy the water on what we're trying to do?
Yeah, but even without including electricity, I believe that in the current environment, the target is unrealistic. It's not achievable unless the council drastically wants to subsidise local businesses.
Yeah. Okay. Any further speaks or questions? I'll put the motion then. We got the mover and the seconder? Yep. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 16.1.2, the Regulatory Services Fees and Charges Amendment, pages 423 to 430. Is there a mover for this? Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Whelan. Any speakers or questions? With the motion, all in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. We need to go to council and discuss this, don't we?
Which one was the? Yeah. If there's discussion on confidential items, we'll.
Yeah, there will be, yep. Okay, I'll move that council move into closed session pursuant to section 254J3 of the local government regulation for discussion of the following items. I'll move that council resume an open council. This is seconded by councillor Sarah Farage. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Whilst in confidential, we discussed items 15.1, 15.2, 15.3 and 15.4. Move to 15.1. This is moved by councillor Chapman, seconded councillor Farage. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.2, this is moved by councillor O'Keefe, seconded by councillor Phil Truscott. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.3, this is moved councillor Byrne, seconded councillor Cosgrove. Any speakers or questions? Put the motion. All in favour? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. And item 15.4, this is moved councillor Paul Truscott, seconded councillor Chapman. Any speakers or questions? I'll put the motion. All in favour? 2, 3, 4. Sorry. 1, 2, 3. That's. Sorry, I'm going to have to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's must be 8. All opposed? 2. So that's carried 8 to 2. Is there any further business? That concludes the agenda. I will close the meeting at 11:22. Thank you.